All right, YouTube, welcome back. I've been pretty busy, still working on jigs, just haven't had a chance to tie a lot. And one question that I get asked more than anything is, what do I do with my leftover hackle? And if you tie jigs long enough, you know you're going to end up with, you've used a lot of what you were after to tie that crappie jig. You've been using all these sharp points. You've got these V's. You've been cutting V's out of it. Now you're left over. What in the world are you going to do with all this? And I, did the same thing myself. It just seems like a lot of waste. So I'm going to show you what I do to kind of help use up most of this waste. The number one thing I like to do is I like tie bluegill jigs with it. And what I'm talking about when I'm saying bluegill jigs, I'm using something really small. This is 1/100th of an ounce. That's how big it is compared to the tip of my finger. So this is where a lot of my scrap hackle ends up going, is into these really small jigs. That I wasn't going to use this hackle for anything else, and I didn't really want to waste a tip on it. So we're going to go with something really, really small. Like I said, 1/100th of an ounce. That is a tiny, tiny jig. 2-pound line, fish underneath the bobber over top bluegill beds. This is a killer little jig to use. And we're going to do it just like we do every jig I tie. Put a couple drops of glue right on top of it. Hardest hole head cement. We are going to wrap it. And I'm using a very thin, small diameter thread. I'll show you what it is here in a minute once I get it turned back over. Clip it off. So now what we got is we're going to go through this and figure out what we're going to use. So let's pull one big feather out of there that's still got life left on it. This one I've already used some of the size off it for some other bluegill jigs. Let's take this one right here. This one right here has still got a lot of long material left on it. And some of that is what I'm wanting to put inside that jig. So we're going to cut that feather off. We're going to pull some of those feather fibers up. And we're going to take, I think I'm going to try to take all these. So we're going to bundle all that up in one pinch in your fingers. And you're going to pull some of that off. Get it situated to where now kind of got like a small piece of tail material. Trim it off up at the top where it's even. Lay a little bit of that right there on the top of the shank of that hook. And I'm going to wrap these just like I wrap bucktail. Get some of those crazy fibers out of there. So I've got some chenille up here, or a chartreuse hackle up here, and there's still quite a bit of good crappie jig material in there I'm going to use. But I'm going to big weird feather right here with that big fat end on it. I'm not going to use that in a crappie jig, so we're going to put that into this bluegill jig. So I've done the same thing. I've cut off that much of it. And we are going to take all these right here. We're just going to strip them off. They come off just that easy. So we got a little bit of chartreuse material. We're going to lay it right on top of that red. And for a bluegill jig, if you're fishing over top of a bluegill bed, you can stop right there. You can call that good. But we're going to add a little more to the top of it. We're going to put some more chartreuse up there in the tip. Same thing, we're going back to this feather. top third of it. Pull it off. Clip the end of it. You have to be kind of careful here once you get in these really small jigs that you don't stick that hook tip right in the tip of your finger. Take it out of the vise and get it kind of situated. We are going to put in this rainbow flash, and with the 1/100th of an ounce, we ain't going to have to use much, but what I'm going to do is, I had this in a box and it's gotten kind of rolled up a little bit, but we're going to cut one strand out of it. Fold it over. Right over the eye of that jig head. Tie it down. We'll cut that excess off right there. We're going to lay it on there and tie that in. Then we're going to wrap it up right there. We're going to try to seal that up to where you don't see any of the chartreuse feathers. We're going to tie it to where you don't see the flash that's in it. And we're going to trim that. So that's what we got right now. Give it a couple more wraps. Get the old whip finish tool out. Trim it right there, and then we're going to do some UV resin. I ain't gonna take a whole lot on this one to set it in there. Really going after that one good drop right on the end of that brush. But by far the number one question I get most of the time is, what do you do with all your leftovers? And this is exactly what I do with them. Sometimes when I'm crappie fishing, I'll have an 1/8 ounce jig at the bottom. I'll take a 1/100th of an ounce jig, run a little leader line off, and I'll have it a foot above my 1/8 ounce jig head, and this one just kind of trailing behind it. Sometimes when you miss that first initial strike, they see this one and they end up getting it. Over the top of bluegill bed, it is absolutely deadly. Put a little float right above it. Throw it inside those beds. And you can do this with any material you got. You got a bunch of leftover bucktail. The hollow hairs at the end of the bucktail are good with this because they'll spread out. They make a really cool looking jig. The next jig I do like this, I'll probably do that. Give this a try with your leftover hackle. Comes out great. It's a good tip. It's good material. Even though you've already used all the tips, you've gone down through all the V's you can get, you still got that feather left over at the end. You know, what are you going to do with it? Let's put it in the jig. This will work. It is an awesome jig. I hope you give it a try, give it a shot, because I know if you're tying jigs, you got a ton of leftover material. There you go. That's what I do with it. That is all I got. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you think about this little bluegill jig. See you next time.